Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thankfully, Collin is back now. Where did you go?
I went to Buena Vista.
Buena Vista. Okay,
Yeah.
so no more solo show. Thankfully, I do not have to do that. While I was gone, there was an absolutely insane amount of news with the Middle East, and of course, Jimmy Carter dying.
Yeah.
And I also do have a monologue today, so I think we should just start now. So, our first topic is, of course, Jimmy Carter, the 39th President of the United States, dying. I tried to look into this, and I could not find out why he died. I was just talking to you about that a second ago.
Yeah, I believe it could have been skin cancer. I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he seemed just like a really genuinely like down to earth, really good person.
Yeah.
He was just a very good person.
Yeah, he was just like I mean, basically the entire internet is talking about that right now. That's the only thing that anybody's talking about. But his legacy, I mean, really will, in my opinion, be defined not by his presidency and more by the stuff that he did outside of his presidency, like peacemaking in the Middle East. Like, what's your opinion on Jimmy Carter as a president? Do you think he was a good president?
I mean, I think he was a good president with the whole thing with the Camp David his Camp David Accords and bringing together Israel and Egypt, but he couldn't turn around a slumping economy or free American hostages in Iran in time for his second term, so he didn't win his second term. But yeah, I think definitely he did a lot, but it just wasn't enough for him to win his second term.
I mean, on the hostage thing, he wasn't able to free the hostages, and then Reagan basically freed them by just like giving a bunch of weapons to Iran. So, is that really better?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, but that's. I mean, like I said, he'll definitely be defined more by what he did outside of his presidency. He was able to vote one last time for Kamala Harris, of course, and I mean, I didn't expect this to happen at all, and it's so interesting how the internet has reacted, in my opinion, and how people online have reacted, because there's so many people celebrating it, but there's so many people just going out saying like, oh, he was a terrible president, this is really bad. I watched a Mr. Beast, or not a Mr. Beast, a Mr. Beat video, like, the historian guy. I watched, I didn't watch the video that he made about his legacy yet, but I watched a video about him ranking the presidency, and he said that Jimmy Carter was as bad as George W. Bush.
Wow.
So, I probably wouldn't agree with that, but, I mean, I don't know if there's that much else to say about that topic. It's really shocking. Again, I just couldn't figure out at all why he died, but that's that. So, our next topic is the H1B bill. Basically, a civil war in MAGA right now. So, Trump appointed Sriram Krishnan as his AI advisor, and MAGA is not happy about this because he supports the H1B bill, which just basically supports skilled immigration visas into the country for skilled labor. So if you're like, a lot about technology and designing stuff, then you can get let into the country. But one of the main villains that MAGA has been able to basically craft in its story is against immigrants, and that's one of the reasons that they won the election, wouldn't you say, right? Like, if they didn't have immigration, they would probably be way worse off. So people are really mad, but Donald Trump has sided with Elon Musk on this, with him saying that he does agree with this, and I think Elon Musk has a lot of foreign labor into this. So like, it's just like kind of like I talk about in my monologue today, Donald Trump isn't being, I agree with this. I support the H1B bill, but he also isn't going with his base. So it's kind of like a pro and a con, because you have one side which is he's doing something that I agree with, and the other side which is, well, his base didn't agree with it, and they didn't vote for it, and so, I mean, one of the major reasons that, like I was saying earlier, one of the major reasons that they won in 2024 was because of this narrative around immigrants. And Trump is basically just completely turning around and saying, you know what, I'm going to appoint this guy. I mean, AI advisor, how much is the AI advisor? It probably maybe more in soon, but it's, like I say, like Donald Trump ran on this anti-war platform, and then he appointed Mike Huckabee to the ambassador to Israel, which is just a psychopath. So, like, what do you kind of think about that?
Yeah, I mean, Trump is definitely known for doing things that, like, his base and other people wouldn't necessarily agree with. He's been, in the past, able to just completely change entire bills and things like that, completely flip the Republicans. So, it will be interesting to see what happens this time. Will they kind of change their point of view and side with him and Elon Musk? Or not.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Will the MAGA base really like turn around and side with like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and Trump on this? Because that is a major betrayal, honestly. Like, immigrants are a huge villain in Donald Trump's story, and just going with them and saying, you know, I'm gonna say this and go with Elon Musk. And this comes as a kind of a civil war with MAGA on this, but also the civil war with... I didn't really see this as too newsworthy to go in here, but I don't know if you saw Laura Loomer kind of speak out against Elon Musk, and then Elon Musk like took away her subscription services that she had on X, or Twitter as basically everybody calls it. So, I mean, Elon Musk... I'm pretty sure that if anybody here has ever listened to another episode of this where I do talk about Elon Musk, you probably know the opinion that I have about him. I just think Elon Musk is an absolute moron. I don't think that he should be the most powerful person in our government, for sure. And on this, you know, how can you search up how much Elon Musk is worth right now? Because I'm pretty sure I searched it up the other day, but I forgot it. Like, I'm pretty sure it's some absurd... Wasn't it like 200 billion last year? Like 436... Like, you should not be able to be worth that.
That's crazy.
You shouldn't be able to be worth that. You have way too much power in the government, but like... That's just disgusting, bro. Like, I do not like Elon Musk at all, but that's really the end of that. I mean, there's a huge divide among this. Maybe we should like try to find somebody that agrees with this to come on here, but it's winter break right now, so we probably couldn't. But our next topic is the whole situation with Israel going on right now. So on the 26th, Israel carried out attacks against Yemen, which killed, I'm pretty sure, 23 people, according to the New York Times, and they struck an airport and a bunch of ports. So this topic is really like such a difficult thing to solve. So like, I don't know if you know much about this, but basically the Houthis and Hamas too. Like, well, that's one of the reasons that Hamas is so difficult to target, because Hamas and the Houthis have these missiles that are like $800 that they can fire. I mean, especially Hamas. I mean, Hamas can. I mean, they're like 10 miles away from Tel Aviv. So they can just bomb Tel Aviv with these $800 missiles, and they cost millions of dollars to shoot down. And that's basically the reason that the Houthis have been able to control the Red Sea entirely, because they're just this group of ragtag rebels up in the north of Yemen, and they're able to perform all this stuff in such a cheap way and shoot all these missiles into Israel, and I mean, that was what the first monologue on the show was about. You remember, like, my monologue about Israel? Yeah. It's so hard to counter these guys. And Israel has proven to, in my opinion, not really be competent enough to... The IDF has not proven itself capable enough to deal with this. And so Hezbollah is just... Or, not Hezbollah. The Houthis have been continually just striking and striking and striking. I mean, it was like... This strike that killed 23 people came after, I'm pretty sure like a week of just bombardment. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens in like 2 years if the Houthis just keep striking and striking. And then also with Israel, there was this hospital in the north of Gaza, which they basically just forced everyone out of and burned down. I'm pretty sure it was the last functioning major hospital left inside of the Gaza Strip. So in my opinion, these actions are just like completely in step with a genocide. I mean, it's just like, what is really left in Gaza right now? I mean, that was also my monologue, the first monologue on this. Like, I know you disagree with me on this, but like, there is nothing left in Gaza except for Hamas. That's literally the only thing left that there is in Gaza. Israel has successfully destroyed everything in Gaza except for the one thing that they were meaning to destroy. So, I guess the last functioning hospital in the Gaza Strip is gone. I think we should get some, like, I think you're pro-Israel, right? Mm-hmm. Like, we should have, like, an actual formal debate on this show about that sometime. But just, really, really sad in my opinion. Like, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, in reference to the whole Houthi thing, it's like, yeah, how do you counter these cheap missiles? I think that could be one of the biggest arguments for preemptive or proactive strikes, because that's, unless you're killing the people and stuff like that are actually doing these things, like, because you're right, there's no way, and they haven't shown that they've been able to counter these, like, whatsoever. So, like, yeah, I would say, yeah, that's just... It could be interpreted as
like escalation through de-escalation through escalation.
Yeah, kind of.
That policy, in my opinion, just doesn't work at all. I think that peace through strength, that whole approach, is kind of the reason why BRICS exists. Wouldn't you kind of agree?
Wait, that what?
BRICS exists. Like Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. This whole economic alliance against the United States. Because, in my opinion, if you force people into this corner, they're not just going to say, oh, whatever, I guess we'll just do whatever the United States wants. I think that they're gonna push back with backlash, and they're gonna create these alliances against the United States. So, in regard to preemptive strikes, I mean, if Israel right now ended its genocide in Gaza, left its illegally occupied territory in Lebanon, and actually de-escalated with Iran, I'll say this: people disagree with me. Israel is the escalating force in the conflict between Iran. Iran is not escalating, in fact, Israel is, in my opinion. Because Israel struck inside of Iran, who was that guy's name? Like the military general that went there for the president's inauguration. And they knew where he was in Qatar. They specifically struck inside of Iran in order to get Iran to respond, to get the U.S. to get involved in the conflict. So they're purposely escalating this over and over again. Iran, basically, in their retaliatory strikes against Israel, said but they were like perfectly calibrated to basically say, oh, back off here. And then Israel struck back, and then Iran has to strike back because they can't just say that they're weak to the entire world. They're trying to send a message that they want to de-escalate, and Israel just won't let them, in my opinion.
So how would you propose then, instead of preemptive strikes, that you would counter like these just cheap, like $1,800?
Because if you have if you have a movement inside of Yemen against the Houthis, I mean, the Houthis are like widely popular because, I mean, Saudi Arabia has been committing all these war crimes inside of Yemen, and the United States has supported it. So it's the same thing with Hamas. The reason that Hamas will have won this conflict is not because of any territory they captured or any bunkers. It's not logistical. It's ideological. It's because the people of Gaza are becoming more and more and more aligned with Hamas because of the damage that Israel has caused inside of the exclave. So if you don't just... I mean, I'm not a national security expert, but this approach of just preemptive strikes and just making everybody hate you has shown itself time and time again to not work. So if you have a movement inside of Yemen and you say, look, we're not going to bomb you, we're not going to do all this stuff, we're not just going to like commit a genocide to a bunch of... are the people of like Hamas, are the people in Gaza Sunni or Shia? Because I'm pretty sure the people in Lebanon, Lebanese people and Iranian people share majority Sunni, I'm pretty sure. Here, I'm gonna search this up. Okay, they're Shia, okay, and Lebanon. so there's a lot of Shia people in Lebanon and basically all Shia in Iran. So if you keep committing all these war crimes, the people in Yemen are gonna hate you. How are you gonna strike retaliatorily? I mean, this isn't entirely. They have like the entire north of Yemen. You can't just strike like thousands of square miles. So if you stop this policy of, I mean, I think peace through strength sounds really convincing until you put it as escalation or de-escalation through escalation, in which it doesn't. So like, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I think, let's see, yeah, so, what was I gonna say? It was like, in regards to Yemen, I guess, like, oh yes, so, but you can't just, like, do nothing, though, and just, like, try to maybe start a movement and just say, well, we're not gonna go in and attack, the Houthis or bomb you guys. We'll just kind of let it keep happening. And
I
hope
mean,
that you guys change
Yemen, Iran, the rebels, the Iran-backed forces instead of Syria and Iraq, Hezbollah, Hamas, they're all this axis of resistance against the Israeli-led kind of proposed rule of the Middle East. And so the reason that Hezbollah struck Israel on October 8th was in solidarity with Hamas. And they kept striking because Israel kept committing this genocide. And they ramp it up and they ramp it up, and Hamas and Hezbollah ramps it up. If Israel stopped its genocide in Gaza, Hezbollah would stop strikes. If Israel stopped striking Iran, they would stop striking Israel. If they just let the thing cool down, but they won't cool it down because they want the United States to get involved. Like, what? Like, do you seriously think that Israel is striking Iran in such a profound way to not get the United States involved? Wouldn't you say that that's Netanyahu's primary goal?
Sure, yeah.
So, if you just...
Well, I mean, hang on. Well, I mean, also, I think the goal here is just to stop these things from happening, because if you have these people that just keep attacking you and sending these things that you can't stop.
Iran has repeatedly messaged that it will stop striking Israel if Israel stops striking it. There is no other... If you're Iran, you have to respond to the assassination of a top military general when they're inside of a palace in your country. You have to respond to that. You can't just say that you're weak to this entire resistance that you're leading. I'm not trying to justify Hamas or Iran. Like, obviously the Iranian government's pretty evil. Obviously Hamas is very evil. The Houthis are horrible people. But they fundamentally want de-escalation, and Israel wants the U.S. to get involved 100%. Like, how could you possibly respond if you assassinated a top military general inside of your country? Like, you can't just signal weakness to the rest of the world. And Iran's strike against Israel was severely limited. Like,
yeah.
it was basically all struck down by Iron Dome. If Hamas and the Houthis and Hezbollah and Iran all coordinated a missile strike on Israel, Iron Dome would be completely useless. It would not be able to shoot that all down. Israel is at a huge risk. It's putting its own citizens at risk because of its own desire for escalation. Wouldn't you say that? Like,
wait, huh?
It's putting its own citizens at risk by escalating stuff so severely.
Yeah, sure.
So, like, this approach, the Houthis are an extreme... Like, what I want to say to kind of end this. The Houthis are an extremely complicated force. It's not simple at all. But if you spend millions of dollars... I mean, of course, the first approach, you basically can have the approach where you just dump millions and billions of dollars into countering these guys, which is extremely expensive and often doesn't work because they can just come back. So that doesn't work, and then preemptive strikes, it's too broad of an area, and then you have to, like, then the Yemeni people hate you, so then they start joining the Houthis all the time, and then they're more united and have a common enemy, and then everybody, like, it's a really complicated situation. I'm not going to pretend like I am some expert on this, but I will definitely say, in my opinion, peace through strength will not work, and it will never work. It has never worked. And so, like, do you have anything else to say about that?
Nope. Okay, Lennon, let's hear your monologue.
Well, we just went through an election season, and after Kamala Harris's decisive defeat, everyone has been probing into why she lost so badly. Theories include the abandonment of economic populism, the short time period Harris was able to campaign for after Biden's withdrawal, a general incompetence of the candidate, a mix of them all, and many more. But one stands out to many on the right, and to me, it's ridiculous. But it might be right in many ways. That's, of course, the wokeism theory. This being the idea that Kamala Harris lost because of her commitment to transgender, LGBTQ, and social justice ideology, and the propped up claim that Harris is a far left puppet. Much of this comes from her 2020 primary campaign for president, where she said many things which were used against her this season, including the statement that she pushed through legislation in California to guarantee transgender prisoners the right to sex change surgeries. This claim would have you believe she is a far-left lunatic, and to be fair, that's a pretty crazy thing to say, although her position has changed drastically since 2020. In an interview with NBC News last October, Harris was asked about gender-affirming care, where she actually dodged the question, simply stating that she believes we should follow the law. Harris didn't campaign with transgender individuals at all in her 2020 bid for the presidency. She actually didn't really mention transgender people in any way. I'll be honest here. Kamala's 2024 campaign was somewhat incoherent and didn't have a solid message that she was able to run on. But of what she was able to get out, none of it was on this issue. But, as always, the right came up with their old faithful position of attacking transgender people to rile up their base. When considering all of this, we have to think about the Pennsylvania they-them ad, where Trump capitalized on the statement from Kamala Harris in 2020 about taxpayer-funded sex change surgeries for prisoners. It was one of the most effective messages by the Trump campaign this season, with the message that Kamala Harris is for they-them, and that Donald Trump is for you. But let's really put this into perspective. The amount of transgender people in America ranges from 1.3 million on the low end to 3 million on the high end. At max, 1.14 Americans identify this way. 1.4%. And there's much more to talk about here too. The right jumped on the story of Amin Khalif, a biological male, beating Angela Carini in the Olympics, when it turns out she's actually a biological female with 2 X chromosomes, born in a place where it is illegal to even identify as transgender. But even if Amin Khalif was a male, even if the amount of Americans identifying as transgender was slightly higher, even if in some niche instances schools in California had a Pride Day, the question still remains, who the hell cares? MAGA will talk all day about rising prices, struggling people, and the hardships faced by the everyday American. Then go campaign on this issue that realistically doesn't really matter at all. How do the vanishingly small number of high school transgender athletes affect the working class? How does a small minority of people asking their friends to call them different pronouns affect the prices Americans face at the grocery store and the gas pump? The answer is that it doesn't at all. But Republicans know that they have to campaign on it as a supplement for actually popular policies, which the left holds most of. Aside from immigration reform, the Ukraine war, transgenderism, and a couple other niche issues, the left holds most of the popular policy, such as banning price gouging, supporting unions, gun control, the right to abortions, not cutting Social Security, healthcare reform, raising the minimum wage, free speech, marijuana legalization, and taxing the rich. Of course, this isn't an ideal world where we have someone like Bernie Sanders on the ticket instead of an incompetent candidate pushed onto the stage last minute after Biden's miserable campaign, but the point still stands. Republicans cannot attack these positions for the most part because of how popular they are. And if someone who actually embraced these positions faced Trump in 2024, they likely would have won. Trump sent a message that he's not for they-them, and that he's for the regular working-class Americans, which is why he asked oil executives for $1 billion in exchange for whatever they want, appointed oligarchs to position of power, and completely abandoned his anti-war platform by appointing neocons, warmongers, and psychopaths like Mike Huckabee to dictate foreign policy. I do not agree with the tenets of transgenderism, but the backlash against it has actually caused more harm than it has, and transgender people have a drastically higher chance to be murdered in the US than people who aren't transgender do. Look, I've debated this topic 1,000 times. I don't believe that men can be women or that women can be men. And well, not what presidential campaigns should focus on in their final days before Americans head to the polls, the number of kids who have been undergoing gender-affirming care, the small number of which should not be receiving it. I'm not presenting this as a wokester, but personally, I'd love to see Republicans try to run on tax write-offs for the rich, keeping the minimum wage as it is, and cutting Social Security. Yeah. Alright, Colin, what did you think of my monologue?
Hang on, I just need to finish this sentence.
Alright. Here, I'll just restart here. Once you're done.
Okay.
Alright, Colin, what did you think about my monologue?
Okay, so I would just ask you to clarify real quick. Why do you think that Kamala Harris lost the election?
I think she was an incompetent candidate. I mean, it's a lot of factors. I would say that, I mean, she was just a generally incompetent candidate. She wasn't able to send a coherent message. She wasn't able to distance herself from Joe Biden. I mean, when she was asked on The View, what's your difference from Joe Biden, she wasn't able to say anything. And Joe Biden is an extremely unpopular president. He has one of the lowest approval ratings, like next to Donald Trump during the COVID era. So she was basically seen as a incumbent who would continue the same policies of the Biden administration era. And I believe that if Kamala Harris was elected, I don't know what would have happened to Lena Khan. I think that I like Lena Khan. I would have liked her to stay, but Mark Cuban could have pushed her out. But there would have been some things that were different. It wouldn't have been the exact same. But when asked about that, she wasn't able to distance herself from that. She wasn't able to send a message. She was an incompetent, unlikable candidate. She wasn't compelling. So not only did she not rile up her base enough to go out and vote, she just wasn't able to convince undecided voters to vote. And I mean, her internal polling was basically always telling her that she was losing. I mean, when the Pod Save Bros also came out about that, it was pretty obvious she was gonna lose that election, and by her internal polling standards. And there was no primary for the Democrats. If there was a Bernie Sanders Kamala Harris didn't embrace any of the policies that I actually talked about that are left wing, that only really left wingers support, that are extremely popular, like Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was pushed out of the 2016 primary, and he embraced all these, and he was doing extremely well in the polls. Don't you kind of agree that Bernie Sanders would have won in 2016 against Donald Trump? He had such a coherent message. He had heroes, he had villains, none of which Hillary Clinton really had. Her only villain was Donald Trump himself.
Yeah.
It wasn't coherent at all in 2016, really in 2024. And Joe Biden's 2020 run, while initially it had some aspects of healthcare reform, only really won against Donald Trump because Donald Trump was so absurdly unpopular at the time, and Americans were so desperate for change that they came out in such record numbers and voted for him. So that's kind of my answer to that.
Yeah. So just real quick, in a couple sentences, could you clarify what was your position from the monologue? What were you?
Transgenderism doesn't matter, and Republicans focus too much on issues that aren't important because their underlying message isn't popular.
Okay. So, and I think you did mention that the majority of the positions that Americans care about are left-wing policies.
Yeah.
I would just say
economic populism.
Yeah, but the whole thing with economic policies is that when Joe Biden was president, why didn't all these economic policies, Americans saw how they turned out. They saw the high inflation. They saw all of it.
Inflation did happen, but you'd be missed to not mention that there was price gouging. There objectively was price gouging. And
why did they stop it?
Because Joe Biden sucks. I don't like Joe Biden. I don't think that he was that good of a president. He sent out this message. He said to companies, hey, I'm going to get mad at you for price gouge. And then it literally went down. And then he just refused to do anything about it. Joe Biden should not be in office because he is not coherent enough. His brain isn't there. He didn't have the mental capacity to actually do what was right for the country. But that's Joe Biden doesn't represent a lot of left-wing policies on many positions. On many positions like Israel, he's like a Zionist. He's like on the hard right, except for like one little instance, which he just unfreezes all the... He like freezes bombs to Israel and then sends them back. Joe Biden was good on some things, and on some things he didn't embrace a truly left-wing position. If you had a person like Bernie Sanders in there, he would have definitely not allowed that to happen. If you had a person who truly represented all of these policies, which Republicans can attack, he would have controlled this. Inflation was bad, and there was also price cap, you know?
Yeah. So, I think with the whole thing, I think part of it was the left and Kamala Harris focused way too much on abortion. They thought the momentum would
abortion
carry over
is a popular issue. Like it's not a holy grail, it's not the godsend, but it won them the midterms basically.
Yeah,
dude.
but then Americans realized that, oh wait, the economy is terrible.
I mean, at a certain point, it's not even a policy. It's not even deliverism anymore. It's just that they don't like the incumbent. It's just that they don't like how things are going. And no matter if Kamala Harris actually gave a coherent answer and she said, I'm different from Joe Biden, I don't support this, and I support universal health care, and I support marijuana legalization, and I support gun control, and I support all this stuff, and I support, like these actual left-wing economic populist ideas, she definitely, I'm not going to say she 100% would have won. Donald Trump did have a compelling argument, and it is fundamentally harder at the end of the day if you are the incumbent for an extremely unpopular president, but Kamala Harris is just generally incompetent, which is why she lost. I don't think it was behind a certain position. She just didn't have enough time to campaign. She was an incompetent candidate.
Yeah, so she failed to run on abortion. So, like, how is that different?
Abortion is a popular issue.
Yeah,
it's like a 75-25 position.
Yeah, but it doesn't really matter that much. Like, sure, it carried over in the midterms, but it's not going to carry over 2 more years into the election.
I mean, it's not even necessarily that being pro-abortion is such a great position. It's that being anti-abortion is so bad. Donald Trump basically had to run away from all his pro-abortion or anti-abortion messaging. He said he was the godfather of... he was the godfather of IVF. And he said that, like, some people are crazy on this. Like, there were some pro-life people that were insanely infuriated at so much of the stuff that Donald Trump said, and he still basically abandoned his pro-life position for most of his campaign because of how unpopular it was.
Yeah,
that's
how she abandoned and didn't answer, like, literally any questions because...
Yeah, she was an incompetent candidate.
Yeah.
Like, I would have voted for Kamala Harris. I don't think that Kamala Harris was a good candidate. I think she would have some some policies that were good, some things that we needed, but I think that someone could have delivered the message a lot better. If we had I keep saying this, Bernie Sanders is exactly what I'm saying here. He embraces all of these policies that I talk about. He's not bribed by all of these super PACs because he doesn't have to. He's so good on all these things that I'm talking about. So I'm not trying to defend Kamala Harris. I'm not trying to say that she had this insanely coherent message and the right just smeared propaganda. Like, she didn't do what she needed to do to win the presidency, and at the end she didn't warrant it, and so she lost it. Like, that's kind of
Yes. So, and he said that basically transgenderism didn't matter in the election. I'm just trying to make the link between that and abortion. Like, the right was able to successfully put the idea of the left and all that supporting transgenderism, and that's really what swayed it. So, like, I mean... Yeah,
transgenderism is a huge issue even though it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's kind of how,
because they were able to message on it so effectively
abortion
was
they
definitely...
tried to base their whole message on abortion, and it didn't work.
Well,
Republicans tried to message on transgenderism.
Their message, Kamala Harris's message, was just a failed attempt at saying we're going to change stuff with no real coherent way of doing that. No way to say that.
Oh, yeah, but she had the support from the left parts of Congress and all of that as well. So, it's not just... It wasn't just her thinking all of these things. A large part of the left supported her.
Yeah, well, obviously, because it's their candidate. I mean, like, transgenderism was a huge issue, and it doesn't matter, and abortion was a huge issue, and it does matter. The Democrats would have been in a much different spot if Roe v. Wade wasn't overturned right now. They would not have any of this messaging. Abortion is almost a 75-25 issue divide. Most Americans are pro-choice. So you should embrace that policy. Most Americans believe in universal health care, so you should embrace that policy.
Is that true that most Americans...
Yeah, most Americans support healthcare reform. Healthcare reform, the healthcare.
But you said universal healthcare.
Some sort of healthcare reform. Complete universal healthcare. 62% support with universal.
Would you favor all national healthcare plan? 55% oppose.
Well, I mean that's kind of different if you're having the government control your healthcare.
Isn't that what universal healthcare is?
If you need to have we need to pay for healthcare, and it's like a huge system, and you need to completely you need to have
why should taxpayers pay for other people's healthcare?
That's called taxes. Why should I have to pay if some guy beats his wife and the police get called? Why should I have to pay for that? Because I'm a taxpayer. Well, I'm not a tax.
It's not really the same thing, though.
It is exactly the same.
Why should I have to pay for some guy's cancer treatment that he got from smoking his entire life?
Well, what if he got... So, are you saying that we should only pay for your cancer treatment if you didn't get it?
No, I'm saying it's not fair as a taxpayer.
So what if you just got cancer and you're just a regular guy and you had a healthy lifestyle and you did whatever you could to be healthy and you didn't smoke?
Then you would still have to pay for it. Because it's not
my problem. Did you know that 52% of Americans who get cancer lose all of their life savings within 2 years? Isn't that the most disgusting thing on the planet? Isn't that the most reprehensible thing that the biggest, greatest, richest country that's ever lived has that situation? That is a disgrace to our nation. That is an absolute disgrace. How can you say it's anything else?
I mean, or it could be changed, but just universal healthcare is just terrible. It would decrease competition so much. There's a reason why people from Canada and all that come to the U.S. for healthcare. There's so many people waiting on vital transplants and things like that.
The healthcare system in the UK, you basically have to wait an insanely long time. If you're in Canada, you have to wait, and also it's not ideal. And then in America, we face our own problems too. We should be the greatest country on earth. This is supposed to be an experiment where we're trying something different and we're trying something new and we're trying to be the greatest. And we as a country are 100% able to provide this system for Americans. There is no way that we can afford to give $85 billion to Ukraine, $30 billion to Israel, give all these tax write-offs to the rich. Elon Musk is worth $450 billion.
Well, but this isn't communism. You can't just have him give us all of his money.
No, we need to tax them to absolute death, and so that they you should not be able to be worth $450 million. You shouldn't be able to do that. You fundamentally should not be able to acquire that much wealth. Unless you're an asteroid miner, at Elon Musk's tax bracket, he should be getting taxed 95%. 95%. He should be taxed 95% of his income, because you shouldn't be able to acquire that much money. And if you're
why not?
Because it's like a dragon in a lair, all this wealth that you're never going to use, that honestly isn't even Elon.
Yeah, but he worked for it. He earned it.
Yeah, but I don't care. You shouldn't be able to. The top 10 wealthiest Americans should not be able to control 7% of our entire economy just because they Elon Musk had a emerald mine in South Africa, and then he came to the U.S. and worked hard. You work hard, and then you control our entire congressional system and are able to primary anybody that disagrees with you, and you're able to control this wealth that could be used to do so much good, but just because of the merit, you're able to work for it. Elon Musk doesn't deserve to live in some shack. If people say that billionaires shouldn't be able to exist, if you're Elon Musk and you've acquired this much and done this much, sure, you can be a billionaire. Do I think you should be able to acquire $454 billion? No. No, you shouldn't. We should have unrealized capital gains tax. we should have these things to prevent people from controlling this much of our economy. How can you say that? How can you say it's not a disgrace, like that statistic that I provided to you? That's an absolute disgrace to our nation and every ideal that we stand for and everything that the founding fathers wanted for our nation, isn't it?
Well, I think a big thing that's changed is that before, like previously in history, these really rich and powerful people would actually do things to help, like Rockefeller and things like that. So I don't think this solution is just to tax them like crazy. I mean, I honestly don't know what the solution is, but I think you're right. People, they're not doing enough to help these like ultra billionaires and things like that. But I don't think just taking away all their money
the
is
position that I'm taking is not that we should just go to Elon Musk and say, hey, give us $420 billion. I'm saying as you go up, taxes need to be actually enforced instead of just getting tax write-offs from charities, which, like, I don't know if you know about this, but basically, if you're Bill Gates and you're worth $200 billion and make a charity that basically donates $100 million, you can basically get complete tax write-offs. Yeah. It's insane how that system exists. That should not exist. We should lower taxes on the lower classes of society and make it easier for them to live, and then at the higher echelons they should keep increasing along with unrealized capital gains tax in order to prevent billionaires from just securing all of their wealth inside of stocks. I think that it is 100% feasible. We're supposed to be the greatest country on earth, and we can 100% provide solutions for these problems that are staring Americans down the barrel all the time. Most lower income Americans can't afford an ambulance ride. Most Americans, even the ones that have health care, if their kid gets sick, they have to decide whether to take them to the doctor if it's merited or not. That is disgusting. It's disgraceful, and it's an affront to everything that we should stand for and what the founding fathers meant for this experiment, right?
Well, yeah, but universal health care is not the solution, though. I do agree that the healthcare system needs to change, but
universal... Like, how would you change it then?
I don't know exactly. I haven't done nearly enough research, but just universal healthcare is certainly not the solution. It's proven it really doesn't work. Like, it just, the competition that it takes away is crazy. Like these new technologies, what is your incentive?
There's not an incentive anyway.
There is. All these
pharmaceutical companies are just making a new version of like boner pills so that they can keep their patent. That's all they're doing with their research money. They're using.
Do you know how much innovation has happened in the medical industry?
Do you think?
Bro, it's crazy.
So the cancer industry makes $800,000. That's a little bit. Let's say $200,000 from. That's actually on the low end. $200,000 for a guy that gets cancer. Or you develop a cancer vaccine and it's all gone. Who makes more money? The people who treat the cancer make $200,000.
It's not that simple though.
Yes, it is. If you make drugs that solve all these problems,
a cancer, you can't just invent a cure to cancer. It's so complicated.
So it's more difficult.
It's so easy to take that position though.
If you actually innovate,
invent a cancer.
If you actually innovate and make prices as low as you can to be competitive. I mean, that's one of the things about like true capitalism is that competition doesn't truly exist. That's the reason why airlines in America are so bad, because they've all mutually agreed, look, we're not going to compete with each other. American Airlines and Delta and United Airlines have basically all said, look, we're fine. We're not going to compete. We're not going to actually try to do this. And that is not what capitalism is meant to create in society. It's meant to create
but they are competing though.
They're not competing. They basically.
Then why is there these frontiers in Southwest that are so much cheaper and things like that compared to Delta? Is that not competition?
Delta and United Airlines and
that's like 3 airlines.
Those are the biggest airlines in America. Southwest is like a really unique business model, and look, Southwest has provided a way for many Americans to travel and do well, but if you look at airlines outside of the U.S., like Lufthansa has taken a hit and they're doing worse. If you look at the rest of the world, their airlines are so much better. Singapore Airlines has Singapore Airlines has insanely good airlines. The Middle East, all these European airlines are way better than we are. And the thing is, think about Swiss Airlines. Swiss Air is one of the best airlines in the entire world, and Switzerland is also an extremely capitalist economy. So it's not a problem with capitalism, it's just a problem with how we do it. It's like, if there's so much competition, why do none of the airlines in the US have anywhere, like, none of our airlines really have good service compared to anywhere, any of these European airlines, Middle Eastern airlines, like part of Southeast Asian airlines, there's nowhere near as good as them, and yet we're bigger and they're supposed to have more competition and there's supposed to be more wealth. Like, why are all of our airlines worse?
So you mentioned service, like define service in that airline industry.
I mean, it's
like,
basically better in like every single way. Like, Singapore Airlines is basically better than every airline that we have here in every single possible way.
And how expensive is their airline?
Well, I mean, it's insanely expensive because they do like 21-hour flights because they're in the middle of nowhere. I mean,
yeah, that would be interesting though. Like, is it justified? Like, how expensive is it?
Singapore Airlines is very, very expensive, but they operate at a system which is just like connecting the entire world and taking extremely long flights. But, I mean, you could think about the Middle Eastern airlines. You have Fly Dubai, which is very cheap, and then you also have Emirates, which is extremely luxurious and also doesn't absolutely destroy your bank account. Emirates is expensive, but it's not break the bank expensive. Economy class can be... You can get on economy for Emirates using only points, or you can buy it for like a couple $100. It like nearly the same prices that we have here, and they give you a meal. They have a reclinable seat. They have flight attendants who speak 7 languages. They have all these different people, and yet, how's the UAE doing? UAE is basically controlled by monarchs. It's basically a kingdom. It's not what America is, and yet they're doing better than us in that regard. Like, wouldn't you kind of agree?
Wait, what is the UAE?
The United Arab Emirates in the Middle East.
Oh, I see.
It's basically a monarchy, and they have everything on lockdown. They have no free speech. Like, the UAE is not a better country than the US, and yet they're doing better than us in that regard. So we have a problem where we just let these companies do whatever we want, and we shouldn't. So we should probably move on unless you have one last thing to say.
Yeah.
So we should probably. What do you have for next, Colin?
Let's see. Next, we have the Russia-Ukraine prisoner swap. So basically, Russia and Ukraine exchanged more than 300 POWs. And this was brought about by the UAE. So basically, Kyiv received back 189 soldiers, border guards, and civilians, including some captured in the initial weeks of the Russian invasion, almost 3 years ago, while Moscow received 150 troops, officials in Ukraine, and Russia said on Monday.
I wonder how much this actually signifies. What's the significance of it?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's just shows that there is still some diplomatic relations, and that it's not just totally cut off. So it will be interesting for Trump to see how he wants to stop the war. This shows that these countries can negotiate deals. So will that be a foothold for Trump? Will he be able to negotiate, or is it too far? Too far gone.
Russia. I'm not trying to defend Russia. I mean, I've said this. I don't support aid to Ukraine at this point. Honestly, initially I kind of did, but at this point it's just an endless war. It needs to end. Zelensky needs to stop being so delusional about his goals. And this, this you're proving, a solution can be seen in this conflict. We can find a world where... I think that what Ukraine should do is just give up all the land they've already lost. Wouldn't you say that's kind of reasonable? Give up all the land you've already lost and just cease fire?
The war.
Yeah.
But then, what would stop Russia from just doing it again in the future?
Stop expanding NATO eastwards. That's the entire reason, in my opinion.
Or would you make Ukraine part of NATO? Because
no,
that would be a massive incentive for Russia not to attack, though.
Yeah, but then they're basically completely defeating the entire purpose of Russia's war. Like I was saying earlier, peace through strength and the strategy of moving NATO eastward and eastward and eastward and eastward doesn't work because states and the egos behind the leaders of those states will not let that happen, and they have an obligation to their citizens to provide some sort of resistance. I keep using BRICS as an example. BRICS is not some insanely sophisticated international organization that's going to compete with the dollar in all these ways, but it certainly could. It poses a threat to the U.S. hegemony. So, with this argument, we just need to stop. Let Russia into this global system that we've created. I remember watching that video the other day with you that Johnny Hawks made.
Oh yeah.
And let Russia into this system and stop just being so delusional, and then we don't have to expand NATO eastward, and they don't take South Ossetia or South Georgia and. Or Abkhazia, I mean, South Ossetia and Abkhazia. And they don't take Crimea, and they don't take the Donbass, and they don't have to... and NATO's response to this conflict is just let's just do whatever we've been doing for the past however many years, and let's let Sweden in, and let's let Finland in, and let's wait for Ukraine to get out and let them into NATO. It's just not the right approach, wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
I'm surprised that you're to the left of this issue for me.
Well, yeah, but it's tough, because,
do you support aid to Ukraine?
No.
So, you support not giving Ukraine aid, but then, letting them into NATO?
No.
You're just providing counter perspective.
Yeah, proposing, because I'm just thinking this through myself, how would you... I don't think... it's tough, because, Russia, I don't know what this solution is, but it's really is complicated, how would you know that Russia, if you just let them into all these trade networks, that they would actually, behave themselves, so to speak, and they just wouldn't go back to the things that they've been doing before. So, it's just, I don't know exactly what the solution is, but it's just a really complicated thing. It sounds so good that you could just treat them like the good guys and they would automatically go back, but the people in charge of these places are very corrupt and things like that. So I don't know what the solution is, but it's just really complicated.
When you think about it, Russia, the Russians, Putin isn't a good guy, but Putin doesn't want to have to invade Ukraine and say, have all these sanctions on him, which really didn't work that well. But we have to try a solution besides this, because this solution is not working. The West said, okay, we don't trust Russia, kind of like the perspective that you just provided, what if they go rogue and just expanded NATO eastward, and then they took South Ossetia, and they took Abkhazia, and they take Crimea, and they are annoying to all these neighbors that they have, and the West doesn't listen, and so they keep doing it. And it's just this endless cycle of escalation, which is extremely dangerous, and permitting Ukraine to strike inside of Russia was one of the most outrageous things that the Biden administration did. That's why I think Biden's foreign policy is garbage. I don't know why he let Ukraine do that. He shouldn't have let Ukraine do that. But, yeah.
Okay.
We just turned on the lights.
So now our next topic is the a Chinese-backed company just hacked the United States Treasury Department, which is just crazy. They gained access to the workstations of government employees, and documents that were unclassified. The Biden administration said that on Monday. The hacker basically obtained a security key that allowed it to remotely gain access to the workstations again and the documents on them. So, what is your whole thoughts on this?
Yeah, when you think about this, I know we were just talking about this with Russia, but Russia isn't... What does Russia have? They have, a bunch of submarines and whatever, the Arctic bases. What they have is nuclear weapons. That's why Russia is so scary. China is an extremely... China is the biggest threat to the United States, easily. China could definitely override our global hegemony, and this is just another sign of this continually soft, escalating conflict between us, which I mean, that's like one of the reasons why I support tariffs on China so much when I generally don't support... I don't support tariffs against, Canada and Europe. But this just proves, again, we need... We need to do something about China, man, because that's a big, big deal. And as this keeps going on and escalates further and further and further, we're going to need to stop the reliance on Chinese goods that we have that's so deeply embedded into American life at this point. So, I just think I think it was Bill Clinton that kind of normalized trade relations with China, which is one of the reasons that I don't like. Well, I think Bill Clinton was a really bad president. I would put him. That would if I were doing a ranking, that would kind of tank my rating for him. He just was not this whole thing that we're doing where we say, oh, we're going to oppose China, but we're also going to buy all this stuff from them, and we're not going to impose tariffs on them, so we're also going to rely on them for so much stuff, obviously is not working. Do you agree with me that China is the biggest threat to the United States?
Yeah,
it obviously is. I remember Kamala Harris getting asked about that in the interview. What is the biggest threat to the United States? And she said Iran, which is the stupidest answer possible, but... I mean, we need to put tariffs on China, in my opinion. We need to, this is a problem. This is a problem. It is a good thing. Do you have any more notes about the details of that?
Not really, but, it is interesting. This kind of relates back to our Russia thing, how, Trump invited Xi Jinping to the inauguration or whatever. Yeah. So, then this is what happened, trying to, I guess, almost just, I guess, not sort of de-escalate. Yeah, appease them, and then...
Well, I mean, that's not really... Inviting someone to your inauguration... And
but just, not,
China's 2030 plan is more important than
that. But just, de-escalating or whatever, and then China turns around and pulls something like this. So, I mean, this is... Yeah, it's tough, because, what do you do? I think how you really de-escalate this is try to, because believe it or not, Trump is actually pretty popular with the Chinese people, despite...
Honestly. Yeah, you can continue.
Okay, despite his policies, but I think we just need to develop a more, understand that we're all human here.
He is, dude. Yeah. What the heck? This is so weird.
Yeah, it's crazy, but just, try to find some common ground and focus on how we're more alike than different, and get tourism and things like that.
Them, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think so. But then that's kind of the Russia thing, isn't it, though?
Well, I mean, China is just on default aggressive mode. Their entire goal is to just take, all these loans that they're putting on in Africa. I mean, I've seen that firsthand. I have this crazy story. I went to Ghana, and I was on this Ghanese beach, and this guy called me Chinaman. He thought I was Chinese because the only white people that he ever... Well, Chinese people aren't white, but, people with white skin, the only people that he ever saw with white skin were Chinese people. They are doing some serious work to undermine the United States. That's a humongous problem. So... Yeah, I mean, with the Russia thing, I think that the two states' goals are different, and honestly, the relationship between Russia and China is more a marriage of convenience, in my opinion. I don't think that they're really that good of allies to each other, just like North Korea really isn't that great of an ally to China. They just kind of rely on each other. But that's the thing with BRICS. If we keep shutting them out of the global system with Russia is going to go more to China and more to China, and they're going to get closer. So
yeah.
What else do you have? What's next?
Okay.
Syria.
Yes. Yeah. So the Syrian, the leader just announced that it could take up to 4 years to hold the first election, and this is basically the first potential time frame for when elections could take place. He's basically saying that a whole new constitution would have to be made, and that could take 2 to 3 years. He also said there needs to be a census, which there hasn't been in years in Syria. So you need to count all the people, obviously. And what's interesting is that he's just completely ditched his military clothes. Now he's wearing suits and ties and things like that. So he's trying to show that he's not just some terrorist. He's trying to appear more as a statesman, and he's expressed relative moderate political positions and sought to reassure Syria's many minorities. But it will be interesting to see whether he's actually this way or he's basically just trying to get off the FBI's terrorist list or whatever.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, trying to normalize and so yeah.
I wonder when Syria will be a stable state. That'll be.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly really hope the best for these countries. I mean, obviously, it's basically the best of two evils. This guy does not have a good track record. He obviously Christians might be in huge trouble. The Christians living in Syria, and if he upholds his word, I mean, I'm pretty skeptical about this guy, even still with his rhetoric about being good to minorities, like you were saying. But I mean, I remember watching a video about this plan that Iraq made to kind of like a alternative to the Suez Canal, and I just want to see past all these conflicts and all the geopolitics and just see the people in Iraq and Syria and Lebanon, Iraq. They've been suffering for so long, and they've been suffering for so long under all these whatever rule, and it just you kind of agree with me. I honestly just see this as please just stop killing people, that's really what I have to think about that. It's a really interesting situation. I personally wouldn't really trust this guy, me personally, but I don't know. If you do, then
Yeah, okay. So I think, it's tough. What do you do with Syria? Because it was I believe it was after World War One. It was just basically totally artificial. Created by Europe. It didn't have...
Created by France. I mean, that's all those borders in the region. Yeah. Look how straight they are. It's the oldest region on Earth. Obviously, besides East Africa. It's obviously not supposed to look like that, but it does. And that's one of the reasons why they're so unstable, because of all these European influence. So, so the South Korea plane crash. This was crazy.
Yeah. So, basically, 179 out of 181 people died in the crash. It was basically, the plane was landing, and it flew across the runway. It was trying to land, and it smashed in a concrete barrier at the end of the runway, and crashed, and already experts are like, why was this concrete barrier even here? It didn't appear to have a meaning, but, so yeah, it's actually just crazy. So the black boxes from the plane have been recovered, which are, I believe, the recording devices. Yeah, so that could help determine a cause of the crash. But
wasn't it a bird strike or something?
Oh yeah, I did hear something about that. Yeah, but so they still don't know exactly what it was. So do you have anything to? I
mean, it's kind of like how Tulsi Gabbard was a governor of Hawaii, and then they had a nuke threat or something like you were saying earlier when you were talking to me about this. It'll be interesting to see how the new president is able to handle this with his first few weeks or first month in office. What a horrible situation to deal with right when you get there. But I mean, what type of plane was it? Here, I'm gonna search this up.
Oh, I know it was a Boeing. I don't know.
I'm pretty sure it had to be a Boeing, right? Boeing 737, yeah. So another thing about Boeing. So I don't want to out my science teacher, but I remember he was talking about this, and I was talking about Boeing, and he's like, these astronauts suck in space, and he was like, he was saying that it wouldn't be bad, but really, in reality, this is really bad. This is another sign, again, to kind of relate this to other stuff. Boeing should not be trusted. We can't trust these guys to handle all this. So, how Boeing has repeatedly failed to do so much stuff, and then with this 179 people dying, I mean, you should be able to. They were literally landing, so your plane should not have those type of problems from a bird strike, if I'm correct of what the cause is. So, I mean, it's another, we were talking about earlier, we have Boeing is our manufacturer, and then you have Airbus in Germany, and Airbus makes way better planes than Boeing does, and they're much higher quality, and our planes are not high quality, sadly. So that's really, like, to kind of tie that into other stuff, that's really what I have to say about that. And then we have one last thing, right? The Trump thing, yeah.
Yeah, so Trump just lost an appeal in his sexual abuse case. The $5 million E. Jean Carroll case. So, yeah, basically, all along, he's been saying that the whole case is a scam, as he does with pretty much all of the things.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah, he got in a lot of trouble for defamation against E. Jean Carroll. It could have been like, I'll look, but it could have been like $80 million.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that Donald Trump is a rapist?
I don't know. I mean, yeah.
I think he probably is, in my opinion. But, I mean, like, if you have 50 plus women come out and say that you're a rapist, you're probably a rapist. All right, like let's be honest. Do I think that Donald Trump is just some I'm being targeted? Like, no, you rape people, dude. like what would you said you just don't know?
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't been found guilty.
What did you find?
I couldn't find. I believe it was either 80 or 85 million, but
I mean, if you have 50, I mean, it's like if you have 50 women come out, you probably did it, all right? Like, even though Diddy hasn't really been hasn't been found guilty yet, he's freaking guilty.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
He's guilty, and that's like, I would say I don't think that Donald Trump should be allowed to be president, because I don't think you should be allowed to be a president if you have a felony charge. And I think that we should have stronger systems around that. I mean, I haven't thought about that too much, though. I think there definitely is an argument to be made about political persecution and just eliminating people from the possibility of getting into the presidency. And, like, what if you had, like, a DUI or something when you were young? I mean, I don't have, like, a really strong argument for that. I haven't thought through it enough, but it's pretty interesting that America, as most Americans, in my opinion, probably believe that Donald Trump isn't a rapist, and that's pretty interesting. And, like, it's a really hard thing to think about. Like, there's really two camps of thought, because I don't think that he has been found guilty, because he would have. That would be a felony, the only felony charges he had was like that Stormy Daniels thing, which in my opinion didn't really matter that much. But you could basically say, like, the Harry Sissons of the world saying that it doesn't matter at all, and then also that we just elected a rapist to be president, which is pretty, I don't know if we should have a rapist to be our president, but that's really the last that I have to say about that.
Yeah, I think, not really, yeah, it's just... Yeah, I mean, it'll be, again, interesting to see how it plays out, how he lost the appeal. Yeah. He's obviously going to appeal again and all that.
All right, well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Overshadowed podcast. We will be back on, you can come like Thursday or Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, well, we will see you next Thursday, next Wednesday, and have a good day.
Yep.
Alright, man, that was so long. It's like an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
My mouse sucks, bro. Please. Please work. Okay, it worked.